Welcome to the Beyond Physio podcast, where we help you move, excel, and inspire others on your journey to your next level with knowledge and advice from experts and testimonials from our like-minded community. So, Matt, welcome to our show. I wanted to dive into this quote that I got from Age Grouper, and it reads something like this. Real athletes are those getting up at 4 a.m. to fit in a workout before responsibility takes over. I can vouch for that. No screaming fans, paychecks, endorsements. They do it for the love of sport and challenge the only competitor that matters, themselves. And I really resonated with that as a busy entrepreneur myself, trying to balance life, business, and also family. And knowing that the only time that I can do it is all at 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell us how you got to that quote. Like, where are you with your sport right now? I know you're striving against the pro field.
Yeah. Well, maybe. It's goals tend to like continue to grow with ambition as each year goes by. It came back to kind of the origin story of this whole thing. So I was I was an athlete through college.
What'd you play?
I played lacrosse.
Oh, what position?
I was D midi.
So I was D through high school. I
Okay.
tried D midi in first year of college, and I was like, this is too much for me.
Where did you go to school?
I went to Vassar.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was a
Yeah.
club team at the time. I think it's D3 now.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who'd you play for?
I played at Siena, which is at the time it was the bottom end of D1.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to play Syracuse and
Nice.
and Denver, Virginia, and we would just get spanked.
Yeah.
So we got to play all the big names, and my strong suit was, funny enough, endurance. So I could
As a midi, yeah.
I could just sit on the field the whole day.
Run back and forth.
Yeah, exactly. And wasn't the greatest skill position athlete, but man, if the ball went on the ground, it was mine. So
Love it.
transition from high level sport into working world, and the ambitions and focus just changed from sport to career and working. Um, and got into the field of marketing.
Yeah.
Got into advertising sales. And really was just progressing on that ladder, and it was very much okay, this is what you're supposed to do. Oh, there's the next step. And you kind of kept growing, and it got to a point where I was achieving at a very high level professionally and nowhere else in my life, and it started to rear its head in a pretty ugly way at the end of 2019. Let's say 2019. And just not taking care of yourself. I hadn't exercised in like 5 years.
So basically, after lacrosse, that was pretty much it until this sort of stage.
I think in the early days, like when you go into the sales field, you kind of start off as you know just carrying back individual contributor. You get a lot of flexibility. So I kept up, and I would run. I did a couple half marathons,
Yeah.
nothing competitive, just kind of like completing. And but then as you progress it and get more responsibility, your time commitment grows, and it got to a point. So at its peak, right before the breaking point, it was September 2019. November 2019. I had just gotten off a flight from Sydney to New York, where it was a 2-day trip. I was there for one meeting. It was an important meeting, but one meeting. So I was traveling for 50 hours to be in Sydney for 40 hours.
Man.
And I don't know if you've ever done long haul travel like that, but
It's been a while.
It's when you're completely flipped on the time zone, your circadian rhythm gets so screwed up.
Yeah.
And that was my sixth trip to Sydney in the previous 6 months. So I was all out of whack, and it kind of all just hit me all at once, and just completely debilitated. Couldn't get out of bed in the morning, couldn't get myself to work.
Man.
And I give my wife gets 100% of the credit, because I remember I just sat up and I looked at her. I was like, I can't do it. And she was just like, you're gonna go to work today. You're gonna get yourself dressed, cleaned up, and you're gonna go in and quit your job.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, okay. No, she goes, no, 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 no. You're gonna go and quit your job today. And I said, all right. She goes, your happiness and your well-being is so much more important than any amount of money. And which was scary because she at the time was stay at home, so it was one income, but we were going on a path that was not pretty, and so I just stepped back and took some time off. I like to joke around. I said I did the pandemic resign before it was in vogue. Um, so, but it just so happened that it landed right before, right during. So I was out, done working, and then everything shut down. Um, and then my outlet, what I discovered was, oh, I'll just start exercising. And got into it, started doing a little bit of, stationary bike in the basement. And we're talking like 40 pounds overweight, couldn't do, 20-minute workout on Peloton and I would die.
Man, that's crazy.
And then I just started doing a little bit more each day, and then I started running because Peloton had the audio like
Yeah.
I was like, oh, maybe I'll train for a marathon again. Um, did too much, got hurt, got a bicycle, started riding it, kind of the cliche progression into triathlon. And then there was this, we were on family vacation, and my sister's like, so you can run, you can bike, why don't you go do an Ironman? And I'm like, yeah, I could do that.
Oh my gosh.
And then I cooked up this crazy idea where I was like, all right, I have a lot of stuff I need to work on myself, physically, mentally, self-confidence, follow through, all that stuff. So what if I used this? What if I took a year and I just used this to kind of rebuild myself? Um, so actually, the salesperson in me, I built, I still have it, a PowerPoint presentation. I presented it to my wife. It had financials, it had goals, it had, kind of off-road bailout scenarios. It was like, all right, I'm going to dedicate 1 year. I'm not going to work.
Wow.
I'm just going to, go into the sport. And my goal is to come out a different person, come out more self-confident, physically fit. And in a perfect world, I come out with a new career path because I hate the one that I'm on. And potentially something in this arena. And then I started doing that for, I did the full year. And right towards the end, I started having, the year was coming up to kind of get back to your question.
Yeah.
I started having these thoughts of like, what the hell are you doing? Like, why are you doing this? Like, what
there? Yeah.
What's the goal? What's the end game? And I learned super quickly right there is that there's something that drives each of us, and you're never going to be able to explain it. And at the end of the day, it's that drive that gets you up in the morning, that gets you going. And so when we were launching Age Grouper, that was the mantra. It was like, there is no flashing lights. There's nothing waiting for you. It's you, and it's for you, and no one else is going to understand it, and that's okay. Because they don't need to. This is what helps you be your most complete person,
Your best self.
yeah, exactly. So that was. We only get into the whole starting of age group part, but that's sort of how this whole journey started. So it's kind of fun to reflect and see where we are now.
Yeah. I love that story, and I would say that it really falls in line with the kinds of people that we see at Next Level, whether they're clients or even our staff. Everyone is driven by something that um, can't be explained, something that's internal. And whether the motivation is for extrinsic reward, I think the bottom line is there's a somewhat called duty, I would say, inside that, we can become the best version of ourselves as a team. And in doing so, we can also attract the other kinds of people that we want to treat and work with who are also looking to become the best version of themselves over time. And for myself, I'll be 50 in a year, Matt, which is crazy to me, but nothing, I
You don't
can't.
look a day over 40 now.
Oh, so kind of you. That's so kind of you. And I think for me, it's as I'm looking how do I best optimize myself, and this is a journey for me that began in my 40s. I'm also looking at ways that I can pass the knowledge on onto my clients that we work with, and it's kind of cool having a camaraderie of other people that we treat, where it's like, you know, no one really understands why I get up at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. to do this, and I was like, I get it. I mean, for me, it's for my mental state of mind. To get through my day, I need to be working out. And for a lot of people, it's the same thing. It's like there's a sense of community because there are other people who are like us who do get up. And there's definitely other benefits that we derive from those relationships that happen. There's a deeper impact on our social lives as a result. And that sort of goes into the community that we're trying to build here at Next Level.
So there's this concept I've kind of taken to, and I've kind of learned a bit more about as I've gone through this journey. And there's age acceptance, and this idea of people have these preconceived notions of what they're capable of based on their age,
Yeah.
and how that relates to their max potential. And yes, there's reality to that. As you age, your your ability to perform comes down.
For sure.
But the common belief is that that slope is massive. Like you hit your 30s or your early 40s, and it's just
Yeah.
and there is decline, and it does start to get faster. But where most people are compared to where their maximum potential is, especially if they weren't training as elite athletes from the age of 12.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get faster.
Oh, yeah.
Or perform better or improve, well into your 40s, 50s, 60s. I mean, I made a joke in the sheet is that I'm in the race against time
Yeah.
because like I'm still continuing to get faster even
Yeah.
though I just turned 40, and
Congrats.
I'm like, all right, well, how long does this streak go? How much? Because the ceiling hasn't been hit just yet,
Yeah.
and eventually we'll get there and you'll start to see it. But the reality is, I think that there's a lot more room.
Yeah.
For people from a physical fitness perspective.
Absolutely
And,
right.
you have to do it as you get older. You have to do it the right way. You have to be a little bit more cautious, a
Yeah.
little more careful, put in a little more emphasis on the softer elements of being an athlete than just, I'm going to go out and run 10 miles every day, interval sprints and this and that. It's like, oh, I'm also going to stretch.
Yeah.
And do some mobility.
The joke, Matthew, is that a lot of when I talk to my clients, I usually say that the first thing I noticed in my 40s, and welcome to the 40s club,
Thanks.
as I soon depart from it, I used to preach warming up to my patients, but that's something I didn't do. In my 40s, I have to warm up.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I cannot get into the level of intensity that I want to get to. It's impossible. And the times that I tried, I've definitely paid price.
Yeah.
But it's like one of those things. I was like, I guess I have to really take this differently. And I think for me as an athlete, as a lifelong athlete, it's become more about, okay, so if I'm going to plan this workout, I don't have to always hit, my threshold zone every single workout anymore. It's like, why don't we spend more time in zone two? Let's spend more time warming up, even warming up to the higher weights I'm going to use if I'm going to lift. And that has definitely changed my entire way of being as a lifelong athlete.
It's 100%. So I've been working with a coach for the last 3.5 years, Kurt Parham, and he's a former professional mountain biker.
Wow.
He dabbled in the triathlon scene at the professional level or the elite level.
Nice.
But he's been coaching for decades, and everyone from the top to the bottom.
Nice.
And we talk a lot about and laugh a lot about when you see people just flaunting these massive days, and it's just, he goes, it's really simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. It's warm up, do the work. Some of it's hard, most of it's not.
Yeah.
And just if you can keep showing up and you can just have no zeros in the training log, like things will get better. Things will improve. It's not that complicated, but especially as you progress longer in sport, the warm up piece becomes more and more important because that will create the zeros.
Yes.
If you don't do that.
Definitely.
But yeah.
That's awesome. And it sounds like, along with Age Grouper, I think your wife is on board with Age Grouper too. Is she also an athlete too, Matt? How does that work?
She was a runner.
Oh, nice.
So she focused more on like marathons, half marathons.
Yeah.
Um, and she has a really interesting story. So she hit um a point of burnout with running. And there was a number of reasons for that, but she was just like, it's just not fun. I just can't do it. And she recently discovered, I don't know what you call it, those high rocks competitions.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
Nice.
there's a whole like training culture that's been built up around it.
Yeah.
She goes to a gym called Alpha Fit Club in Glen Rock,
Nice.
and that's just completely like reinvigorated the spark for her. So she does a bit of running still. I think we've talked about her ambitions to potentially do another half marathon, maybe full. But right now she's really debating on, does she want to go and like sign up for one of these high rocks competitions?
Yeah.
Which I'm like, yes, please go for it. I can't wait to watch you do that. And she's like, I have to, and rightfully so. She's like, I'm not you. I'm just gonna dive in. I'm gonna take my time.
Yeah.
But I mean, she is stronger, like physically stronger than I've ever seen her in our entire life together. And
That's great.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
Maybe I should do some
That's awesome. So, Matt, let's talk about Age Grouper. Tell me, I know there's a way for you to basically soften barriers for people who may be entering the sport. Is that part of what Age Grouper is for? Can you
Yeah.
talk more about what we do in Age Grouper?
Yeah. So I launched it. It was, I think it was the end of 2021. I was actually training. It was my first full year in Tri, and I actually had a bike crash a week out from St. George World Championship.
Yeah.
So I was meant to fly out on Monday, and I crashed on Saturday. Was laid up for a month, and it was this massive like culture shift of like I just went from being in dormant human to being the most active I've ever been in my life for a year to now not being able to do anything.
Oh man.
And I was sitting down at the computer, and again, as a recommendation of my wife, she said, "Why don't you just go, just journal?" So I just started writing, and all of a sudden, it was just pages and pages and pages of everything I learned the first year of triathlon.
Wow.
And I was like, I know this is important because once you get into something, it's hard to look at it with fresh eyes from a beginner's perspective. And, it got to a point where I had about a 90 page Word doc of just data dump, everything from little nuances of like how to set up your transition zone to, how to think about training and eating. Um, I looked, I was like, what do I do with this? And we were like, maybe it's a book. And then I sent it to a couple friends in the publishing world. It's not a book. It's like, sorry, you're not a writer. It'd be a cool blog though. So then I was like, well, I think the information's valuable to a degree. Maybe I'll just put it in a blog. So I was sitting down thinking of names. I was like, what if I just call it Age Grouper? And then it was like, oh, that's too cool of a name for a blog. We should probably do more with it. So created the site, we created the social media accounts, and it really just launched with, let's just seed out these bits of knowledge, these things that you would learn from veterans while you're on a group ride, like the like little comments that you get. I remember going on a ride very early on, and I was riding with this guy John Potter, and we were coming down. I don't know if you've ever ridden up in Harriman.
No, of course. Yeah.
So we were coming down one of the big hills.
Yeah.
And he just goes, "Oh, by the way, if your wheel starts to wobble, just put your knees against the top bar." And I was like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, just put your knees against it. It'll stop the wobble." And I was like, wouldn't never even thought of it. Wouldn't even know to ask about it. But it's just one of those things that went in my head. And now to this day, every time I go downhill, I think of him. I'm like, oh, knees against the bar.
Thank you, John Potter.
And those little tidbits of just knowledge, like how do we seed that out? So we started doing it with really focus on long form, editorial content.
Yeah.
At one point, we had 5 writers.
Oh man.
And then we started using social media to promote the content. And what we learned was the social media content was way more efficient and cost effective to produce, and it scaled much more quickly. And the editorial, was nice to have, but we would need a lot more volume before we could actually monetize it.
Yeah.
And so we really doubled down on the social media front. Built a brand, built an account identity.
Yeah.
And frankly, for me, I learned that space the hard way. We tried everything and anything. I go back and look at like the early stuff that we were publishing, and I'm like, oh gosh,
I do that too.
what
It's
were
just
we
like,
thinking?
what is this?
And and then on the editorial side, we learned what people wanted. Right? We started off with this idea of here's the content. I actually had a whole editorial calendar written out for like 2 years. It's like, here's what we're gonna write. And we learned quickly, like, yeah, people don't want 80% of that. So and that's not going to drive or generate eyeballs. So we started really hyper focusing on the content we knew people were interested in, and then the tactics for promotion we knew actually generated the traffic.
Yeah.
And we were able to scale it up to not huge, but meaningful size for the side project that it was. But you know going through and building that was really more of a launch pad of getting deep into the business side of endurance sport.
Sure.
I mean, I got connected with countless brands, major organizations. My claim to fame is I got to meet Jack Kelly from the Triathlon Hour before he blew up. Because I was like, this is a cool podcast. It was still, at the time, it was called How They Train.
Oh.
I was like, this is really awesome. And the age group account was bigger than his at the time. So I reached out, I was like, hey, I want to just connect and I'll do a review and promote your podcast. So we had a 2.5 hour conversation. And we were just chatting about everything traveling. It was so awesome. And then he blew up, and I'm like, oh man.
You know him when.
So it's been fun to watch that. But yeah, we had conversations with the head of sales Ironman. We got connected into a bunch of big brands, but also a bunch of cool like startup, up and coming brands.
That's really cool.
And eventually the big sort of, for me, progression point was got linked up with Power Bar and started doing some promotional work for them through Age Grouper. Got close with the folks that were running it, and then eventually joined and was doing social media and digital marketing for those guys for a little over a year.
Really?
Yeah, and that was so much fun. That was a blast.
That's so cool, man. What is the kind of content that you found has caused a lot of, I guess, of your audience to really sort of dial into, or what they prefer for you guys?
It's the biggest pieces are around either passionate milestones, basically like unique elements within the sport. So passionate milestones would be if we put on our number one piece of content we created was how to break 20 minutes for your 5K. And it's one of those things like people lock into these points of accomplishment and round numbers. And it's like how to break the 3 hour marathon, or how to break an 11 hour Ironman or 10 hour Ironman, whatever you want to do.
That is a big milestone.
And anytime you put that, it's automatically gonna pique interest. But the key was actually having an answer, because a lot of people are like, oh, how to do it, and it's like, train more.
That's right.
Do speed work.
Oh my
God. So what I always found is there was never any meat on the bone. So anytime we put something like that out, we always would pull experts in
that should talk
that knew. And we got lucky. I got connected with this coach. His name's Mike Trees. He lives in New Zealand now, but he was professional. He was a national team athlete when he was younger for the UK. He was a professional triathlete for a number of years, and he coached a lot of Olympians and high level runners. So he knows this sport. He knows the nuances from the metabolic level, from the physiological level, running mechanics, training philosophies. He knows it from soup to nuts. And I said, hey, I want to put together this article called How to Break 20 Minutes for Your 5K. I was like, what would you prescribe to a runner? And, his biggest thing was like, well, first of all, you can't just say that because somebody that's currently running 30 minutes is going to be a lot different than someone that's running 21 minutes.
Right.
Good point. And I was like, well, then, yeah. So how we do it? So we ended up putting together this article that really broke it down. And it was like, what we're really trying to do is improve your finish time by upwards of 10 to 15%. So that means that, if you're 30 minutes, it's relative.
Yeah.
And then we broke it down and created a training plan that you could download with it. That was, I think it was 12 weeks total, but it was very specific, and specificity was the key. And it was, here's what you're doing on your slow days, here's what you're doing on your fast days. And the fast days is all this build towards your race. So it starts with, 16 by 400 at your target pace, as long as you can, with long rest.
Yeah.
And then it truncates down, and then it goes to 800s, and then it goes to 1Ks, and eventually you're doing 3 by 1 mile.
Yeah.
And then, you do that right up until the week out from race day. So you've been kind of progressing towards this goal. And we've had, that plan and that piece of content's been viewed, downloaded tens of thousands of times.
Wow.
And we've gotten notes from people, countless, like, I couldn't believe I actually did it, 1948, and, I improved it by 3 minutes. And it all just goes down to, you have to actually give them the recipe. You can't just, flaunt the label of like,
Right.
oh, you can do it. And, soft tissue work at night is the secret.
Yeah.
Like, no, that's not secret. It's work. It's 12 weeks of work. That's what's going to get you there. But it's focus is the right word.
I like that. And runners are really good at following protocol and very regimentedly. So that's
So are triathletes.
Yeah, that's absolutely.
Triathletes are very, we call them paint by number athletes. It's like, they'll literally do everything in the training plan, whether they should or not.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it was in there.
Yeah.
It's like, you've been limping for the last 2 miles. It's like, you probably should stop. So, who's in the training plan? Said to run 8. I'm going to run 8.
Exactly. So then, in a nutshell, it sounds like Age Grouper also is a really big educational source for a quality educational source for people who really want to achieve what they didn't think they could achieve.
Yeah. And a lot of, if you go into, on the site, we really broke it down into the different aspects of training. So we talk about nutrition. We brought on a number of licensed dietitians, nutritionists to help explain, macronutrients. Like, what are macros? Like, why should I care about the split, and what should I be eating? And then going deep into, training and race fueling. We did a big one on electrolytes, and that actually did really well, because everyone just hears the word and it's like salt. It's like, no, there's actually like a lot that goes into that.
Yeah.
And each one does something very unique and different, and this is why your body needs, a combination.
Right.
And then, so nutrition, training, even things like training etiquette. The idea of, great, I'm going to go and I'm going to do this, but, let's say you show up for a group ride. You've never done a group ride before. Do you know how to ride in a group? Do you know what happens if somebody signals with their hands and what that means? Or like what you should and should not do?
Yeah.
Don't show up to a group ride and try bike.
That's it.
And if you do, don't go.
Don't go everybody. Exactly.
But unless you should do it and have someone potentially say, hey, please don't do that ever again, you're never going to know that, or you never learn to. So we were trying to just encapsulate all the potential pitfalls a new athlete could have, and then put that all in one place so they could access it. And it's not to say that doesn't exist in other places.
Of course.
I always said my struggle was either the content out there was crowdsourced through forums, which is super frustrating because you'll go in with a question that's super simple of what's the right saddle height?
Yeah.
And you'll get 200 answers, and half of them will say higher, and half of them will say lower.
Right.
And you're like, I'm literally where I was when I started, just more confused.
Yes.
Or the other side of it is, the large publications, which they do a great job of sourcing experts, but they're catering to such a wide audience that it's usually fairly watered down.
Yeah.
So you get very general recommendations. So we always focused on trying to have we want to speak directly to this type of athlete.
Yeah.
And it may not be good for every athlete, but we know it's good for that one, which is that beginner multi-sport athlete or beginner endurance athlete. And it'll give them maybe a little bit more than they would have wanted when they started, but it'll benefit them in the long run.
Yeah, I love that. So Matt, like on topic of beginner triathletes, is there any sort of advice or recommendations you might give to those people who are just like so curious about triathlon? Maybe they were like you, where they kind of like biker runner sort of thing, and told that they should try to do try as far as getting to like an actual getting to the first race. Any general bits of knowledge or tips you might recommend?
Yeah,
A little question too, I know.
there's a lot.
Yeah.
The funny answer would be, and I'll credit this to Kurt. He says there's two things a triathlete needs: an iron stomach and a very understanding partner.
Oh, definitely the partner. Holy cow!
Because it's a massive commitment.
Yeah.
Massive time commitment. Especially if you're looking to, if it can become a snowball. And before you know it, you start off like, yeah, I'll do this try. And then it's like, oh, I'm training, 10 hours a week, 12 hours a week, 20 hours a week. And if you're not setting yourself up with the right support structure and people aren't aligned with what you're trying to achieve, it can, it's ruined marriages.
Oh,
like there are
so many.
I know of, I can count on two hands divorces that I know of that were stemmed out of, one person going down this path way too deep before the other one was ready to be on board with it. So it's like anything, like understanding communication, making sure that you have a partner or spouse, if you do, that's on board to go on with the journey.
Yeah.
And then the other big one is that, again, I don't want to keep re-quoting Kurt, but it's simple. It's not easy. Like it doesn't need to be, hero workouts all day, every day.
Right.
You do a little bit of hard, but most of it's easy. It's just time and patience.
Yeah.
And you can't really think in terms of months or even years. It's almost like thinking in 5-year or decade blocks because
Like that.
fitness is like a startup.
Yeah.
It's going to take a lot longer than you think.
Yeah.
And you're always going to be mentally 5 steps ahead of where you are physically.
Sure.
But that's the fun part, right?
Yeah, it is.
All of a sudden you can pause and look back and like, wow, look how far I have come.
Right.
Oh, but look how far I still need to go.
Yes. Dan Sullivan, under Fred in his books, he talks about the gap in the gain and how the best way to manage expectations is to focus on how far you've come, because that horizon is super, super far. But if we sit in gratitude and appreciate that gain that we've come, it really can sort of catapult us into the next category.
Yeah, 100%. And I always think it's fun because I look at and you shouldn't compare yourself to others, but there is an element of evaluating your peer set.
Yeah.
And it's fun to see the peer set changing and growing as you progress.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, oh man, I would love to be as fast as that person. And then you're like, oh, well now I want to be as fast as that person.
Yes.
And then you kind of just keep
climbing.
going.
Yeah.
and that helped bring it back. Of like, I remember when I was aspiring to this level, and now I'm like I've surpassed that, and I'm going to something different. And I see that that's a very fun and interesting dynamic and thought process because it applies to outside of sport. So I'm looking at that now with one of my big goals for going to last year was I really want to be a better dad. Like I really want to be more present. I want to be more involved. Because I went too deep on triathlon. As most do.
I will. Oh,
And
I definitely did too.
and I had to reel back. So I was like looking at, and then the other day I was um, I'm coaching my son's lacrosse team, and I was looking around. I was like, wow, I never thought I would be standing in this field in the freezing rain and loving every second of it, and
Great.
just spending that quality time. So, and you kind of look at that level of progression, which is kind of cool.
That's for sure. Yeah. So let's talk about. I'm gonna botch pronunciation. Is it Adani? ADD.
Oh, it's so this is I guess a bit of an unveiling
Oh,
because
okay, here we go.
so the backstory here is in working with Power Bar, not getting into too much of the details, but basically the contract terms to run the Power Bar business came to an end, and um, my current business partner Eric Zaltis, he was the one that was running that. When that was over, he looked at me and said, "Hey, what do you think about starting something new?" Because his background, he'd been with the Power Bar brand for 20 something years.
Oh, really?
And his role, he was in the R&D department. So
Wow.
he literally sat between the researchers and nutrition scientists that are experimenting with what does beta alanine do to your body, and is there a benefit? And then the product development folks are like, okay, great, how do we put beta alanine in a product?
Right.
So his whole world was new, innovative thinking, and he has this massive network of research scientists just from his career. And he's like, yeah, I've got 10 innovative products that we could bring to market. I mean, not all 10 are going to work.
Right.
And who knows? But like, there's 10 potential paths. And, instead of letting a large existing company run with them, why don't we just create a new one and do it? And I was like, yes,
Sign me up.
please. So we went and we took about 2 or 3 months just going through wakeboarding, different idea, came up with some really innovative, cool stuff. Um, and eventually we landed on one. They said, this is the one we're going to launch our business with. So the company's called Adra Labs.
Adra Labs.
So Adra we took that from to subspecies of gazelle. And so, we really wanted a brand that would stand out a bit and carry a bit more meaning. Because when you look at a lot of the sports nutrition brands in the market today, it's like Power Bar and like Spring Energy. It's like all very like industry dominant terms. So we wanted something that represented what we were really focused on, which was bringing innovation into endurance sports nutrition and focus on performance.
I love that.
And the gazelle was, kind of an icon that spoke to us because I don't know if you know this, but its superpower is its main predator is the cheetah.
Yeah.
Cheetahs can run 80 miles an hour, but only for about 30 seconds. Gazelles can run up to 60 miles an hour, but they can do it for minutes on end.
I see.
So they literally survive by outlasting. And like, there's no better definition of endurance. And I was like, that embodies everything. And then the Adra was that subspecies kind of takes it to another level because it's evolved to kind of be a bit more be a bit skinnier, so longer, skinnier legs, narrower body and torso. And the whole point of that is that it's more surface area to radiate heat. So that of all of the kind of land animals, it has one of the longest migration distances. It can go the farthest without water.
Wow.
And there was just all of these different connections that we could bring into endurance sport. That's like, let's call it that. Adra Labs. That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah. And my immediately comes to mind is like survive and thrive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's a powerful sort of metaphor there.
Plus, it just looks cool. Like,
Yeah.
you see the like strong like gallop, and the first product that we're coming to market is um, everything's focused on that endurance sports industry, and one of the areas that we had an innovative product that was what we felt underserved was the protein space.
Yeah.
And
Big time.
and it's not to say there's not protein products. I mean, there's thousands of protein companies, but the vast majority are geared towards mass market, and their big push is how can we cram the most amount of protein with and claim 0 grams of sugar and not put anything else in it. And what you end up with is something that's loaded with low quality protein that doesn't taste very good.
Yeah. Very poor.
Or on the opposite side, what you have seen in the endurance space is protein candy bars. Where it's like, yeah, it's got 20 grams of protein, but it's also got 40 grams of sugar. And it's literally listed as a meal replacement. Which, don't get me wrong, they taste amazing. And there's a time and a place for them. But it's not something you can eat on a regular basis or incorporate in your diet. So, some of the research that we, through one of the researchers that Eric got connected to, pointed towards this strategy where you can actually improve the quality of the protein, improve the usage and efficiency of it by manipulating and increasing certain amino acids. One in particular is called leucine. So if you can boost leucine by a certain amount, leucine acts as a trigger. So, if all the protein goes in your body, think of it like you're building a house. Many of those amino acids are building blocks. They're wood, they're sheetrock, they're nails. But something needs to tell your body to actually activate them and use them to start muscle recovery and protein synthesis. And that is what leucine does. So by increasing the amount of leucine, you increase the trigger, you start the process more quickly, and it functions more efficiently. You end up actually using more of the protein that you consume as opposed to most of it just passing through. So with the study that with the peer-reviewed studies that we based our bar off of, it was basically you can have something like a 15 or 17 gram serving that will function and perform through efficiency as high as a 30 plus gram serving.
Oh, that's interesting.
And for us, that was great because we're designing this for endurance athletes from the ground up. So we knew we wanted smaller is better. And it's not to say that triathletes and endurance athletes don't eat. I mean, they eat a ton. But this is meant to be, a protein serving, and you want to get that in your body as quickly as you can. So being able to keep the bar small, but the effectiveness high, keep the sugar not 0, because endurance athletes are not afraid of sugar. But they don't need to get their sugar from their protein bar.
This is absolutely true.
So, we can keep it under, 9 or 10 grams, and keep it in single digits. That allows it to taste good. And then little things that we thought about, like, we're not going to coat it in chocolate. Not because we don't want to. Like, we could have done it and kept the sugar down, but most athletes are taking these things on the go. They're leaving it in a hot car, right? And they don't want it to like be a mess when they warm it up. So we let them naked. And even like the size of the bar and the packaging, most of them are long and skinny. They don't necessarily fit in a pocket. Ours, we kept them purposely designed to be a little bit more square. So they were shorter. With being smaller, fit perfectly in a jersey pocket.
Oh, nice.
In a small pocket in a bag or short. And then even like the design of the package, like we used color theory, material science, like how do we radiate the most heat so it doesn't get as hot, right? Just all around, we said, what would be the ultimate protein bar for an endurance athlete? And that's what we hope we've created. We've only done a trial production run so far.
I came with the triathlons that you gave. So.
And we made them in 2 versions. We have a vegan version and a whey version.
Vegan too. Oh man, Yvonne's gonna love that.
So she already stole it. And the goal is right now we're doing what's called a usage trial. So we only made about a couple thousand bars. We sent them out to a handful of folks,
Yeah.
getting some feedback, and the goal is to do our first production mid-June.
Wow.
So
That's amazing.
we're on our way.
Yeah.
So
I'm so excited because, I mean, you really are somebody who's doing now what you really love to do. And that has really catapulted you to doing other things that are even cooler.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
could you see yourself having been in this position where you're now creating a product?
If I go back to it's that look back, right?
Yeah.
In 2018, 2019, I was um, sitting in I can't remember to pronounce it wrong, but Cannes Film
Oh,
Festival,
yeah.
France,
Yeah.
but the advertising and media section of it, which is I think the week after the film festival, and I was just running around meeting with Verizon and you know um, different media vendors and my whole life was just okay. My goal is to sell more advertising space. I'm going to do that, and to think like, hey, you're going to be in a few years' time doing something completely different.
Oh, yeah.
Like I would have been like, you're crazy,
I
you're nuts.
love that, man.
But it's been a pretty cool transition.
Wow.
Financially terrifying.
Oh, I feel you've been there too many
So,
times.
but I think that the kind of big takeaway is when there's that feeling when you graduate from college of just unknown and opportunity. And once you get on the career track, that kind of just disappears.
Yeah.
And I feel like I have completely rediscovered that. Like I have no idea where any of these tracks are. Like as an athlete, as the age group of business, this business, something else maybe. Who knows? Like I have no idea if it's gonna work, when it's gonna work, but I know that direction feels right.
Yeah.
So just keep pushing.
Yeah.
And
And the light's been green. I mean, it hasn't,
yeah,
relatively green.
there was some reds and some yellows along the way. But I had a coaching business that I launched.
Oh.
Not me coaching, it
Yeah.
was a virtual form analysis, and actually got a whole bunch of amazing coaches
Interesting.
and
Yeah.
built a whole platform around it. People could upload it, and to me, I thought this is it. This is gonna be amazing. It lasted 6 months, and it was a big lesson in you can build a business on what people want. It's really hard to build a business on what people need,
Hmm.
and getting people to eat their vegetables is a hard way to make a living.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So, but lesson learned,
Yeah.
and you take that into the next one,
Exactly.
and you incorporate what you learned that didn't work, and don't do that again. And you take the things that did work, and
Yeah.
you carry those forward.
So, Matt, let's talk about how you got involved with Next Level and what that experience has been like for you as an athlete and as just someone who's been part of our Next Level family.
Yeah. So I actually got connected to James at the triathlon that you guys run, PD Tri.
Yeah.
And it was kind of fun. I wasn't racing it, but my father-in-law, my wife, and my son did like a three-generation race relay.
Oh,
So
nice.
so my wife swam, my father-in-law did the bike.
Really?
My son, he
Oh, that's
was
awesome.
8. He just turned 8, or 7 or 8 when he did it. He did the run,
Yeah.
and I ran next to him. But I reached out ahead of time just because I thought it was cool, and I offered to promote it on Age Grouper,
Yeah.
and got connected to James, and we started chatting. So this was August, I think. And then towards the end of the year, you know, looking at 2024, I was like, I'm gonna go all in. Like this is the year. You know, I'm gonna commit the most amount of time to training. I'm really gonna take a swing for some big gains and big improvements. See what I can do as an athlete. And I knew that you know physically with my age, some preventative work would probably be beneficial.
Yeah.
So rather than waiting till something popped up or some injury or something, well, I reached out to James and was just like, hey, here's my goals. Here's what I'm trying to do. I'd love to see if there's some way to work with you guys and get access to some of the treatments that helped me kind of just stay on the field and continue to train. I joke around with Alex, my PT. I go like, I'm Humpty Dumpty, and my job is to go out and break myself, and your job is to put me back together. So we started, just trying it out in November, leading into Ironman Arizona.
Yeah.
And it was really just basic stuff. We weren't even getting into the nitty gritty, and it was just, all right, how do we keep soreness down? How do we keep tightness out? How do we just get you as race ready as possible? And we were using a lot of dry needling,
Yeah.
using a lot of the laser.
Yeah.
Um, and it was all just like keeping inflammation out of the legs.
Yeah.
And it was great because I was putting in big volume. I was, for 3 or 4 weeks in a row, we were like 20 hours, 21 hours, 22 hours of training. And you feel it after a while. It gets in your legs, and you're like, oh man. And that helped me, kind of recover a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
I was able to turn around off of, say, like a 23-mile run.
Yeah.
And then get back out and not have to take a day off. And right. So, and then once once the race was over, it was full recovery of just like lots of Normatec boots, lots of manual expression on the muscles, like nothing too strenuous. It was all just how do we help everything heal as much as possible. And I would say that I was able to bounce back from that race. I was probably like a week or two ahead of schedule from other Ironmans I've done.
That's pretty amazing.
And I think there was a lot of factors that went into it, but a lot of the movement work and the manual work that we were doing, and then I took a lot of that home. So I was doing that I would be in the office once a week, and then I would do stuff at home. 4 or 5 nights a week. Um, and then once we hit January, February, then it switched to optimization, performance enhancement. So it was all right, how do you find where the biggest imbalances? Where are the biggest risk areas? My big thing is I've got one leg longer than the other, but one foot longer than the other. So I end up having this longer lever. So I overactivate hip flexors on one side and overactivate glutes on the other. So it was working like, all right, how do we build in strength programs and use different modalities like BFR to stimulate the growth of those muscles? And it was the first time I ever been to PT where it's like, all right, we're only focused on your right piriformis and glute medius today. Like that's it. It was like, you're not going to do both equally. Like, no, the problem is that was weak. So we're going to do just that one. And it proved forward because I would historically get later into training pain in that area on the bike, and knock on wood,
It's gone away.
knock on wood. I haven't had any of that this year.
That's awesome, man.
So yeah, it's been a really, really big piece of my training. And now it's just continuing on, and now we're getting into the race season, so it's going to be kind of a mixture of going back into recovery mode. Okay, now I'm back into performance mode. Kind of flip flopping. And the teams, it's pretty cool to have them kind of tied in because they see the training plan. They know what's coming up. They know like, oh, you've got a 5-hour interval ride tomorrow. We're probably not going to dry needle you because you're going to be super sore. And just have them like dialed into the plan. So it's just been awesome.
That's awesome. I think a big thing that clients like yourself have valued in our approach has been it's more of a whole person approach. And so we do love seeing what coach, and we love working with coaches and other professionals who are involved in our athletes' lives because it is a team approach around the individual, which is you as the athlete. And a lot of people think that PT is just for when you're getting injured, but we have really leveled up towards getting towards optimization for our people who want to continue doing what they love to do and ways to balance those imbalances and work on the small things that really pay dividends in an athlete's life over time, whether it be mobility, whether it be tightness, whether it be imbalances like we talked about. So I think you have definitely well explained sort of like the other role of PT or the growing role of physios in the role of lifelong athletes.
Yeah, you always tell somebody is working with some sort of good PT studio because you'll see them in the gym doing movements and exercise. You're like, what is on planet Earth are you doing? And then you realize like, oh, they're doing something right.
Yeah.
And because there's ways of manipulation. Alex is able to get like, I want to move that specific muscle and that's it. So we're going to contort you in such a way and only get that, and then we'll go in and coach specifically like, okay, no, too far out, you're using too much of this muscle. You need to get that one because that's the troublemaker.
Yeah.
But yeah, 100% spot on. I think it's been very eye-opening to see that, a little bit of focus and care in this area can pay huge dividends.
Matt, I love to have you on our show. I want to do a part two with you where we
Yeah.
dive into triathlon specifically.
Yeah.
But it was a great intro to get to know you and you being as part of our Next Level family, which has been awesome. And we thank for the promotions and stuff like that too in the age group site. And I'm looking forward to speaking to you again in the future and learning more about you. So thanks again for coming on today.
Absolutely. Yeah. Pleasure to be here.
What's the best way for people to get in touch with you, Matt, if they don't talk about Adra Labs or Age Grouper?
So the Adra Labs side's still a little bit of call it stealth mode. I just talked about it. So it's not quite up and running yet. But yeah, going social media is probably the best one. So agegrouper.us on Instagram. And yeah, I'd say that's probably the best platform to reach me or connect.
Awesome. We'll have those in the show notes, and we will definitely do some promotions for you as well. So thanks again for your time, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks.
Thanks so much for tuning into today's episode. It really does mean a lot to us. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, or comment if you got at least one or two helpful insights or takeaways to help you get to your next level.